Yeah, thanks for having me. Wish I could be there in Big Sky this week, but have some work to do in Michigan. I actually gave this presentation last week at the joint Northeast Midwest conference, which I attended, and also to the, I believe it was the AASHTO Subcommittee on Maintenance in July. So you're getting the same presentation, and by the end of this, you should know all about the metrics, and if your state isn't reporting, what you can do to start, and the history and all that good stuff. So I always like to start it off by showing this cartoon. A lot of you have probably seen it, but this is my favorite one, so I always show it. It's just, the dinosaurs saying, oh, the comet's, likely coming. The data is saying that, but the other dinosaur is saying, no, I'm just going to trust my gut. So with a lot of these performance metrics, yeah, we do like to trust our gut, but at the end of the day, having information and data behind your decisions makes it a lot more powerful and a lot. It seems to me like it's a lot easier to get through to management what you're trying to accomplish, which I'll get to in later. So just really quickly, and by the way, I know I have an hour, but I'm probably not going to take an hour. I'm sure I'm right before lunch. Here in Michigan, we have a new fleet manager, Colby Page. So next year, if you're at the national conference, which I believe is in Colorado, you will be meeting Colby and hopefully myself. We have a fleet specialist that does our purchasing and also another analyst that does fuel. That's basically our fleet management statewide here in Michigan. So in September 2010, this performance metrics kicked off. So we had a discussion, I believe it was at a national conference, which I didn't attend, but it could have been at a joint conference. And then we had a survey that was sent out, and then the end result of all that work in 2012, AASHTO Subcommittee on Maintenance adopted Resolution 1203, Equipment Fleet Management Performance Metrics. And since then, we've had many M5 webinars, Fleet Management System Champion Performance Metrics webinars. We haven't really been doing those since 2019, but we can kick those off again if someone is interested. We've given presentations. You can see there's a little picture of me. Hold on, let me get my laser pointer here. Picture of me and the old fleet manager at, I believe that was a national conference. And in July 2013, we started our initial submission for posting on the EMTSP website. And I am going to show you in a few slides what that website looks like, what's on it, and how to navigate it. So why measure performance metrics? Probably everyone in the room knows why, but just in case you don't, at the end of the day, each metric basically lets your fleet tell your story, and that's kind of why I like these specific metrics. You're trying to tell your story, so you're sharing ideas like benchmarking, collaborating nationally. I will say that even though these are all posted on the web, the goal isn't so that you can go directly compare yourself with another fleet and say, I'm better than another fleet. It's more for collaboration purposes, and I'll get into that in a second. So at MDOT, we have had a lot of positive impacts. The biggest positive impact that I'll always say is we improve our preventive maintenance compliance statewide from about 55% to 95%. So obviously, if you're not sending out that report to all your mechanics and garage supervisors and management, you probably have low compliance. But when you start sending it out, you get the information in front of people, they tend to make good decisions, because no one really, in my opinion, wants to make a bad decision or see their fleet become in disarray. Enables you to know where you are in relation to where you want to be. There's accountability and transparency, and the comprehensive asset management approach. That's cradle to grave approach, so like procurement through disposal. We thought some of these reports would be best if your fleet was a certain size to start reporting, and I'll get into those in a second. So what makes a good metric? So it's has to fit your organizational operational need. and align with your strategic plan. So for example, preventive maintenance, obviously you need the equipment to do the work that you need to do, and it needs to be up. So your preventive maintenance is a way to keep your equipment up. That's where it would fit into your organizational plan. It needs to be specific in nature with a clear definition. So I think we've all seen reports that you kind of just open and then you immediately archive. We don't want these to be that. We want these to be, really simple. It doesn't take a ton of time to dig through the details, but there is detail if you want to dig through it. So it's all database, so that would be a good metric. There's leading and lagging indicators. So a leading indicator would be like you're measuring something and not the end result. So you're measuring, for example, if you get all your preventive maintenance done on time, then you'll have that would be the leading indicator. The lagging indicator would be your scheduled versus unscheduled. You should have less unscheduled or breakdowns if you're doing your preventive maintenance on time. So leading and lagging. And the source data, customer input, so balance needs versus wants. Obviously, I'm a data person. I like a lot of data, big data, but it takes a lot of work to collect that. So you balance that out. High level instead of getting into the weeds. Someone like me would get into the weeds, but you're not going to want to send management of getting into the weeds kind of report. And then data integrity becomes an issue the lower level you go, obviously. You're going to see more of the errors. So there's 5 key metrics that are part of this national performance metrics that we thought are key to each fleet and would apply to each fleet. So in 2012, we had 4, so utilization, preventive maintenance, availability, downtime, replacement recommended, and in 2017, the group added another one, scheduled versus unscheduled repairs. So I'm going to be going over each one of these. We report these codes out by NAFA codes. So we use the NAFA classification. So for example, light, medium, heavy, non-self-propelled, off-road construction, and overall, those all correspond to these NAFA codes that are on the website that I will show you in a little bit here. Here's what they look like. And what I want to iterate or say for this slide, don't get caught up on the NAFA codes. A lot of states are starting to adopt them. So if you already have them, that's great. Everything's already mapped to these codes. But if you don't, at the bottom here is what we use at MDOT. And probably most of the codes you guys use internally are going to be match up with these NAFA codes. So for example, light fleet, anything under 10,000 GVW is light. So I know that, certain one of our groups in here will map to that. Mediums 10 to 26, I believe. Heavies, anything above 26,000. Non-self-propelled and off-road construction equipment are kind of self-explanatory, but construction equipment that can't propel itself and, like loaders, graders, and stuff like that would go in this category. And then overall would obviously be the overall percentage. So don't get stuck up on you have to match each vehicle or piece of equipment with a NAFA code. You probably already have codes that already align. So I would just generally align those codes with this. This is really what we're reporting on the form, and I'll show you that too. So utilization, this one started in 2012, one of the original ones. It's a measurement typically in hours or miles to indicate how frequently a vehicle or piece of equipment is used within a given time period, so a month, quarter, year. And with these metrics, I do want to say these are using your own internal DOT criteria. So I'm going to show you what we do in MDOT, but you would use whatever your own internal criteria is. So in MDOT, here's what it actually looks like in our fleet management system. Here's what the report looks like that I actually send it out internally. So you can see I do it by month and by quarter and by year. And here's our own internal, what's acceptable, fair, and low. But for these national metrics, we're only reporting out, it's basically yes or no for each vehicle. So for the whole year, if our plow trucks were above 360 engine hours, that is considered utilized by MDOT. And if it's below that, it would be not utilized. You can see there's a bunch of stuff on here on how to calculate the percentage. I'm not going to go into that, but if most DOTs are going to have probably a fleet management system where they collect this information, so you should be able, hopefully, to report it out, every year what was your utilization. But if you can't, you can, and it's not as accurate, but it's just an average. You could take how many years in service a vehicle was, divided by how many miles or engine hours it had, and that'll give you an average per year, which is okay to report it out. If you can't report it out any other way, I would at least do that internally. But just realize, obviously, it's not going to change that much, especially after it's been in service for a bunch of years. It's going to take a lot of miles or hours to really start affecting that. So, but it gives you something to work with. Preventive maintenance. I think we all know what that is. It's a fundamental planned maintenance activity designed to improve life and avoid any unplanned maintenance activity or breakdown involving a vehicle or piece of equipment. So like oil changes, inspections, that type of stuff. In our fleet management system, this is what it looks like, the screen, where I actually enter it. This is the report that we actually send out internally. So, I have it color coded. One thing I will say, this might hang you up if you either have a fleet management system or you're thinking about getting one or getting a new one. A lot of them try to do predictive like analysis to tell you when it's going to be due. And we had a lot of problems with MDOT. So actually redesigned our entire preventive maintenance program to use straight percentages, and I'll tell you why. If you don't have consistent usage, like a trucking company, like over-the-road trucking company, we were running into a situation where it would say an oil change is due next month, and then tomorrow it would be due last week, just because our usage is not consistent enough to do that kind of prediction, at least not with AI. When they implement AI, I think eventually it will get good enough to do some accurate predicting, but right now we use straight percentages. So as you can go right here, it's going to be due next Tuesday, it's 129% overdue. So most of these reports I send out statewide internally for us only show what's 90% due or greater. Some of the mechanics get everything regardless if they just want to see what's upcoming. So like I said, good for fleets with inconsistent usage. If you do it based on time or just the straight percentage, it's either compliant or not compliant, like all these other metrics, and then you can come up with the totals. So this is a full screen example of what the report looks like that I send out. Availability, downtime, also in 2012. So availability and downtime, they're just the opposites of each other. So I'm not going to read you the definition, but basically availability is when it's available to use, and downtime is when it's down and not available to do its primary function or use. So if it were in the shop because the tire fell off, that is obviously down, or even if it's in for preventive maintenance, while it's in for preventive maintenance, the mechanic's working on it, it's technically down. So how we measure downtime in M5, it's really simple. It's the difference between our open date and complete date of the work order. So this is what it looks like, and when I train our mechanics and personnel that enter information, I tell them the difference between the open date and the complete date is how long it was down, and that is tracked. And we do show it on reports. And actually, that reminds me before I forget, definitely when you are doing training with mechanics or personnel, show them the reports that you're using this information, show them the output of what they're entering, basically. So they know they're not just doing it for no reason. So when I train a mechanic, I do show them the preventive maintenance report and downtime, and try and relate, this is, what you're doing in the system is going to affect this report in this way, so that therefore it's important to get accurate entry. So if you can't calculate downtime right now, and this PowerPoint is going to be available probably on the EMTSP website or emailed out, you can do it in Excel, and here's the exact formula how to do it. So if you wanted to do it in Excel, if you had an open date and complete date, if you can get that in Excel, this formula will tell you how many days is the difference, and that's basically your downtime. And then you can just do some real simple math. You know, if there's 720 hours in a month and it was down 38 hours, then it was down 5% of the time. So for this metric, we are reporting availability, so it's just, you know, it's the opposite of downtime, so how much it was available. Replacement recommended, this one is, in my opinion, every DOT, every fleet probably in almost the world should be able probably to report this metric. All it's doing is telling you is if each vehicle is past your own fleet's criteria for replacement. So in MDOT, we just do it by months. We don't have hours or mile criteria for replacement yet. So you can see this is the report out I send internally, not what's reported to EMTSP for every vehicle. You know, we want to keep it 72 months. We've had it in service 73 months. Therefore, it's, you know, it's passed by a month. And obviously, you know, when I send it out internally, it's a lot more, you know, we go a lot further than -1. Let's put it that way. So as I'm sure most of you do. This one actually, I've done for one other state, I forgot who it was. It might have been Iowa a long time ago in Excel. So you can actually do this one completely in Excel if you wanted to. Here's the formula that you would plug in, and here's what you need, like a unit number, in service date, how long in months or years. And then if you plug this formula into column E, it will tell you the difference. And you just average that out. And then you would just figure out per unit, you know, if it's passed or not passed, and then you come up with a percentage based on that. So this one's pretty easy. Anyone has any issues with this one or needs help, please contact me, because I can do it pretty quickly in Excel as long as I have all the information. And then scheduled versus unscheduled, to me, the better definition of this would be breakdown versus non-breakdown. That's essentially what we're measuring, and when I train our mechanics, I tell them exactly that. So in our fleet management system, how we determine this is the work order visit reason. When you open a work order, there's a reason, and you have to give one reason per work order. So, for example, if it was a breakdown and then we also did an oil change on it, that would be considered corrective or unscheduled. If we brought it in to do an oil change and then we did corrective maintenance, that would be considered preventive, so like the reason it's coming in. So essentially what we're measuring is breakdowns. And this is actually one of my favorite reports, so highly recommend it if you can get to it. You could also do it per job. Like if you have individual jobs on a work order, you could measure each individual job separately. Personally, I like measuring it based on the whole work order, because that tells you, you know, how many breakdowns you've had. And you can see this is like where we're at MDOT. Excuse me. So obviously you need to determine what codes you consider scheduled versus unscheduled. So however you're going to measure this, however you can report it, determine what codes you consider scheduled or unscheduled. This is all the codes we have when you make a work order. You can see here's an example of an unscheduled one. Interesting story behind that van. And then you just come up with a percentage. So this would be an example of like what I send out internally. This would be a good example of sending something out that's high level instead of getting into the weeds. If you actually got into the weeds of this report, you're just going to see a whole bunch of timestamps, basically, like work order open and close dates. So the graph is better. And it actually, I would say it's even better if you can get it down to like a more garage, like this, for this specific garage, here's like the downtime for our plow trucks or something like that. So statewide, obviously it kind of gets like washed out a little bit. So who has reported? So what I did as I went through the website, and this is from July, by the way, end of July. And I highlighted everyone that's reported since 2019. I'm not trying to throw shade at anybody. I just wanted it to be clear how many people have reported since 2019. So in the Northeast, Connecticut, Delaware, and Pennsylvania have reported. none of them in 2023. Although I will say, attending that conference last week and talking to all the fleet managers, a lot of the Midwest and Northeast fleets have made significant progress in the last, I would say, year or two with their fleet management systems, catching up to kind of what the Western states have already accomplished, and you'll see that here in a second. So I'm hopeful that this will drastically increase, especially for that retention metric. The Midwest, obviously, Michigan, we report twice a year. Missouri and Oklahoma has reported since 2019. The Southeast, Arkansas, and Virginia. And last but not least, you're actually first, the Western states, Alaska, California, Nevada, Utah, Washington, and Wyoming are clearly in the lead when it comes to national performance metrics. So great job. Have an extra dessert on me. So that's who's reported. I would just like to say incremental progress. Don't be afraid to make incremental progress. Like, for example, at MDOT, I've been here 15 years now. I was originally hired to implement our fleet management system and train everyone statewide, and I've since branched out into everything fleet, but I'm still doing that. So we have 15 years of building our fleet management system and reporting capabilities up and out. So it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. So just, don't fry your brain. You don't need to report every metric or every category. So start small. If you can only do like the overall for your retention, or the overall for your preventive maintenance, or maybe you only have light fleet or scheduled versus unscheduled, that's fine. You can just report that one number. There are quite a few states that just reported one overall number that are in those charts I just showed you. So don't be afraid, just report like literally anything you can report. So the EMTSP website, I'm going to go through this and show you the website and the different parts of it. So there's individual metrics by region, state. There's a form section. There's state folders for supporting documentation, and the actual website is www.emtsp.org. If you type EMTSP in Google, it's the first link that pops up. So this is what it looks like when you go to the website. Actually, it's a really well-designed website. I like it, and I love the pictures here. But if you go to the right, and the top national performance metrics, it's actually a button. So it doesn't kind of look like a button, but if you click on it, then you get this. And I'm going to go over what each of these are, but I'll just start from the top to the bottom. I have different slides on them. So the National Fleet Performance Metrics form, I'm going to go over the form, but it's basically like it just has each metric, each category, and you enter a percentage, and then you would send that in to get your region updated. DOT National Metric Benchmarking. This is so you can just quickly see, so you don't have to go into each region what the percentages are for each state, so in case you want to see someone that was really excelling in a particular metric and you wanted to contact them. The definitions are exactly what I just went over in this PowerPoint. It's just a PDF of the definitions. NAFA Vehicle Classification System, that's a spreadsheet, and it just has every single NAFA code, and we got permission from NAFA to post that on here. So you want to know what the NAFA codes are, that's where you would go to get them. And the DOT National Metric Contact List, I'll show you this in a second. This one's really good. It actually shows for the national metrics who the contact is for each DOT and the fleet management system they use. So if you want to find someone that uses the same fleet management system that you use, that would be a good way to do it. So we're trying to keep that updated. There's been a lot of updates to it recently, I know, in the monthly meetings, so hopefully that's pretty good. And then below that, you have each individual state that's reported. If you click on a state, it's going to show you a stoplight for each metric, and I'm going to show you that too. So this is what the form looks like. So if you click on that form on the screen before, you're going to see this. This is like I kind of hacked it up. This is an approximation. So basically, Michigan, July 2023, so state reporting period. And then there'll be a box for each metric, so all 5. And then, it just has light, medium, heavy, non-self-propelled, off-road, and overall. And you don't have to fill every box out. If you only know the overall, just put the percentage in the overall. So just fill out what you have. Don't feel like you got to do it all, is what I would like to reiterate. And we'd like it reported twice per year, July and January. But report it anytime. If you submit it anytime, it will be posted. So if you want to go back and do it next week, if you want to do it in October, November, anytime, if you submit it, we will post it. And by we, I mean EMTSP. I don't want to take all the credit for that. If you hit the submit form button, it should email the following people, including me. But if it doesn't, we have on the bottom of the form who to email. There's some security involved. So if it opens in like Chrome or Edge, the button doesn't work, but if you open it in Adobe, it does. So here's what the national metrics contact list looks like. So you can see, it just has each state. It has who you can contact, their role, and their fleet management system. So if you want to find someone that has the same system as you, then that would be a good way.
Muted.
For that. We've been trying to keep that updated, especially through the monthly meetings. Okay, if you click on an individual state, this is what you're going to see. We called it a stoplight approach because obviously has a bunch of stoplights. The actual green, yellow, and red, we decided at, I believe, a national meeting, or it might have been a separate national metrics group that decided that, but the actual colors aren't important. The percentages are what is important. So as you can see, it's just gonna display the percentages that you sent in on the form. And so if you wanted to just see a state's percentages, you would click on the state, which was, right here. So if you click on Connecticut or Michigan, for example, this is what you'd see, and for each metric. And at the very bottom, there would be a supporting documents folder with the forms you submitted. And for example, Michigan might have some of these briefings, some of these PowerPoints in there. So assistance, now that we have Teams, I did learn that you cannot just Teams me. For some reason, Teams in the state of Michigan is limited to only state of Michigan. I can only basically text message people within the state of Michigan. I can't text, if you have Teams, I can't just quick chat with you. I wish we could, because that would make it a lot easier. But I can schedule a meeting anytime, and I can probably control your screen, and you can see my screen, and we can collaborate however you want. So that actually is a big help. So really looking forward to using Teams. If anyone needs help, probably this is the avenue that I would go, because travel's kind of limited. We could send sample reports, but it's kind of each state's probably going to be specific, and you're going to have your own specific criteria. For example, all of our reports are in an enterprise reporting system, so I could just send you a PDF, but I wouldn't be able to send you here's what the code behind the report is. Not that you'd probably want to see it. Replacement recommended, obviously, can be done completely in Excel, so I would say if you haven't been reporting them, you could start with that one. And if you need help with categorization, that seems to be a big sticking point. For me, that's pretty straightforward. I probably can recategorize your fleet based on whatever categories you're already using, because it's most likely going to line up. So if you need help with that, I can do that. And again, Excel is helpful. So send stuff in Excel. So lessons learned. So you need to document what you're doing, how you're doing it, and why. One of the most important things for these metrics, or just any metric with your fleet, you need an effective way to gather the information, basically. So in MDOT, here's how we do it. I think a lot of states use their financial system, but we use our fleet management system, and we basically import most everything into that system. So we import the meters from our fueling every day or two. I import that. We import, obviously every asset's entered. We make work orders, any other system that we have, I import information into our fleet management system, and then we kind of use that as a sole source for spitting out information. So that's what I would do. I would use, I would preferably, if you can get all your information into one system from, I'm sure you use multiple systems, but if you can't, then you're going to have to coordinate. Statewide or coordinated organized approach. Obviously, if you want to be organized when you're doing this, because as my old boss used to say, junk in, junk out, junk in, gospel out, right? So we're going to use what's in the system, but you got to make sure what's getting in there is correct. And I will say, just from our own personal point of view and what I've learned over the last 15 years, continual training is important. Some mechanics in MDOT I've trained 3 to 4 different times. And usually when we get a new mechanic, I will go out and train them, and then I'll come back a month later. Because the initial training, it's kind of a blur. And then after they've been in the system for a little bit, like a week, 2, or a month, I'll come back and then it'll all kind of click. So actually in MDOT, we typically at least train our employees twice with our fleet management system. And that seems to be the best approach over my 15 years. It's just, I don't think it's realistic to expect an employee to remember all that training the first day, especially if they're new. So highly recommend training twice, or just continual training, that type of stuff. So every state's using performance metrics, but there are differences among the states, like I already mentioned. So just because other states percent really high, maybe their criteria is more lenient than what you're using. Or maybe they have a better criteria, then maybe you could apply the same criteria. So hence one of the reasons we're doing this. There's a tendency to measure what's easiest, but you got to be careful because you're going to drive behavior. You probably have all seen this. I don't have a good example off the top of my head, but if you're measuring how fast work orders are closed, then there's going to be a really big incentive for mechanics to close them really fast, for example. Maybe too fast. So just keep in mind, like, what you measure is going to drive behavior, because people are going to want to improve those specific measurements, especially if you use red on reports. People hate red. So if you want to get someone's attention, use red. And as I already said, we can do some benchmarking comparison for these national metrics, but the focus is on collaboration and best practices. So how can you help? The biggest thing you can do is, I would say, just report the retention metric if you're not already, although I think like most of the Western states already are reporting at least one metric. And you seem to be ahead of the game when it comes to fleet management and asset tracking. So I applaud your group for that. You can identify barrier busting, but that's just the same as with anything else in fleet management or management period. Manage prioritized fleet metrics with other competing requirements. So, maybe you might say you don't have time to report these metrics, but I would just start reporting them internally, and then you could also report them externally, like to EMTSP. And obviously endorse reporting them to your DOT. So what's next? Obviously we want to strive towards every state reporting. Right now we have 39 states plus Saskatchewan who actually attended the Northeast Midwest conference last week, so they were awesome. And they were interested in this as well. They've only reported once, so if we can get all 50 states, that'd be great. And how does this tie to future initiatives? I think, and we discussed it a little bit, but for the future, as far as this performance metrics, I think we should really strive into getting like every state or the majority of states more frequently reporting, at least like once a year, and then maybe we can branch out. I think maybe there's some unique opportunity with electrification, possibly, to see some interesting metrics. I'm not sure about national metrics, but we'll see. Staffing, I think, would be an interesting metric to do nationally, especially if we could make a standard, which I think there is a research project ongoing for staffing. In-source versus outsource, we report that out internally, so that would probably be the next one up, in my opinion. There were some minor operational changes and updates to the form and the contact list, and there's been a big push to get the contact list and to get this initiative, this national performance metrics, back on everyone's schedule. So I want to thank EMTSP and then especially Dennis Halichaf for getting on that and keeping us on task, because he actually did spearhead that, and then obviously focus on current for states reporting. So this is my contact information. Like I said, I'm sure this will be sent out or available on the website. It's not secret information. I can send it to anybody. Does anybody have any questions?
Unmuted.
Any questions? Or Dennis, you got anything else to add to it since? Okay. Any questions from anyone else? All right, Andy, I think we're good.
Yeah, I really appreciate your time. Have fun at the conference.
Thanks.